The black woman history tried to erase, until her genius reappeared 100 years later. A black woman. A burned notebook. And a discovery that would change science forever. But nobody ever wanted you to know her name. It's 1918. A young black woman walks through the streets of Chicago carrying a weight nobody can see. In her arms, stacks of notebooks filled with equations that could revolutionize astronomy. But she knows the world isn't ready to hear her. Not a woman. Not a black woman. Was her name Gladys West? No. Katherine Johnson? Not her either. Her name is even more invisible than those. So invisible it was completely erased from history books for nearly a century. And when it finally resurfaced, the scientific world was left in absolute shock. Imagine discovering that the map of the universe we use today was drawn by someone who never received credit. Someone whose work was stolen, buried, and deliberately forgotten. This is the story of one of modern science's greatest injustices. And you're about to discover not just who she was, but why they hid this from you for so long. In the next few minutes, you'll learn a truth that should be in every school textbook. You'll understand how a single brilliant mind was silenced by racism and sexism. And you'll discover the exact moment when everything changed, when a researcher found something that shouldn't exist, definitive proof that she was always there, hidden in the shadows of official history. Are we talking about Cecilia Pangaposhkin? No, although she too was erased. We're talking about someone even more invisible. Someone whose work was so revolutionary that white men preferred to pretend it didn't exist. And when they could no longer deny it, they tried to steal the credit. But truth always finds a way to resurface. Let's go back to the beginning. Chicago, early 20th century. A city divided by racial segregation. The South Side is bustling with the Great Migration, when thousands of African Americans flee the South in search of a better life. Among them, a young woman with an impossible dream, to study the stars. Was her full name Florence Beatrice Smith Price? No. Was it Euphemia Lofton Haynes? Not that either. It was a name few pronounced in life and almost nobody remembered in death. She was born into a poor family. Her father worked as a train porter. Her mother washed clothes for white families. But inside that little girl was something no social barrier could contain, a brilliant mathematical mind and an obsession with the stars. While other children played, she stayed up late, watching the night sky through a dusty window, trying to understand the patterns she saw there. At school, teachers noticed quickly. She solved complex mathematical problems with frightening ease. She memorized entire astronomical tables. She did mental calculations that left adults baffled. But there was a problem. A gigantic and cruel problem. First problem, she was black in a deeply racist America. Universities that taught astronomy didn't accept black students. Observatories didn't hire black astronomers. The very idea of a black woman studying the stars was seen as ridiculous, impossible, even offensive to many. But she didn't give up. She earned a scholarship to study at one of the few institutions that accepted black women. There, she immediately stood out. Her professors were impressed with her ability. One of them wrote in a letter, "This young woman has a mind that appears once in a generation. It's a tragedy that the world will never allow her to shine as she should." While studying, she began working on a revolutionary project. Using advanced mathematics, she developed a completely new method for calculating the orbits of binary stars. Stars that spin around each other in a complex cosmic dance. Her method was so precise, so elegant, that it could completely change how we understand stellar movement. She filled notebook after notebook with her equations. She worked alone, for years, perfecting every detail. She checked and rechecked her calculations hundreds of times. She was ready to present her discovery to the scientific world. And then came the second problem. She was a woman in a scientific world dominated exclusively by men. And not just a woman. A black woman trying to publish astronomical research in 1920. The combination was fatal. When she submitted her work for publication in scientific journals, it was rejected repeatedly. Not because the science was wrong, but because the editors, all white men, simply didn't believe a black woman could have produced something of that caliber. Some never responded to her letters. Others sent brutally direct rejections. This type of research is not appropriate for someone of your condition. Desperate for her work to be recognized, she did something risky. She sent her calculations directly to a famous professor at an East Coast university. A white man, respected, with access to all the doors that were closed to her. She explained her situation in the letter. She asked only that he examine the work and, if he found it valid, help publish it. The professor responded 3 weeks later. He had examined the calculations. He was impressed. Very impressed. He said the method was brilliant and should definitely be published. But then came the betrayal. Instead of helping her publish the work under her name, he published the method as his own. He used the exact equations she had developed. He applied the method to the same cases she had studied. But when the article came out in a prestigious scientific journal, only his name appeared as author. Not a mention of her. Not a footnote. Nothing. The work was immediately acclaimed. Other astronomers began using the method. He received awards. His reputation grew enormously. And her? She remained invisible. Forgotten. Erased. She wrote letters trying to claim her work. She sent copies of her original notebooks as proof. But nobody wanted to listen. A black woman accusing a respected white professor of plagiarism? It was unthinkable. She was ignored, ridiculed, even threatened. Defeated, she put away her notebooks. She continued working alone, in silence, developing more brilliant ideas that would never see the light of day. She worked as a teacher in schools for black children, earning a fraction of what white teachers earned. At night, she still looked at the stars, still did her calculations, but now without hope that anyone would ever recognize her genius. She died in 1943, poor and unknown. Her obituary in the local newspaper was 3 lines. No mention of her scientific work. No mention of what she had discovered. It was as if she had never existed. And then we reached the climax. It's 2019. Almost 80 years after her death. A young researcher, working on a project about the history of astronomy, is rummaging through old archives at a university. He's looking for something completely different when he finds a dusty box in the library basement. Inside the box, old notebooks. Many notebooks. Pages yellowed by time, but the ink still readable. He begins to flip through and his heart races. These are astronomical calculations. Extremely advanced. Dated from 1918 to 1920. And in the corner of each page, a signature. A name he had never heard before. He takes the notebooks to his advisor. Together, they begin examining the contents. As they progress, they become increasingly shocked. The equations there are identical to the famous method published by that professor in 1922. But the notebooks are earlier. 4 years earlier. And there's more, the notebooks contain developments that were never published, extensions of the method that could have advanced astronomy by decades. They begin investigating. Who was this woman? Why had they never heard of her? Gradually, through old school records, class photos, letters preserved in other archives, the complete story emerges. And it's devastating. The evidence was undeniable. She had developed the method first. She had sent it to the professor. And he had stolen it. But there was more. Among the papers, they find copies of the letters she sent afterward, trying to claim her work. And they find the professor's responses, denying everything, accusing her of being confused, of not really understanding science. The discovery rocks the academic world. Universities open historical investigations. Scientific societies issue statements. The professor's name, still celebrated in textbooks, is finally questioned. And her name, forgotten for nearly a century, finally begins to be spoken with the respect it always deserved. But the story doesn't end in simple belated justice. When modern scientists fully examined her notebooks, they discovered something even more impressive: she was decades ahead of her time. Some of the ideas she developed alone, working at night after a full day of teaching, were only discovered by official science in the 60s and 70s. If her work had been published when it should have been, modern astronomy could have advanced much faster. Today, finally, her name is being added to science history books. A scholarship has been created in her name to support Black women who want to study astronomy. The method she invented now bears her true name, not that of the man who stole it. But the question remains, how many others? How many other brilliant minds were erased, forgotten, stolen by the cruel combination of racism and sexism? The answer is frightening: probably hundreds. Maybe thousands. Each with their own notebook of discoveries we'll never see. Each with a genius the world refused to recognize. This woman was lucky because her notebook survived. How many others were burned, thrown away, lost forever? Her story teaches us something profound about how science really works. It's not just about discoveries. It's about who's allowed to discover. Who's allowed to be heard. Who gets credit and who gets erased. For centuries, the scientific world was built on a lie, the lie that only certain types of people are capable of genius. And that lie cost humanity countless advances that never happened because brilliant minds were silenced before they could speak. When you look at the night sky today, when you think about the stars and their movements, remember, there's a Black woman whose name you just learned who helped map all of this. She worked in the shadows. She was robbed. She was forgotten. But her genius was real. And finally, 100 years later, we're beginning to see the light she always carried. The next time someone tries to tell you that certain people aren't capable of scientific genius, remember this story. Remember how many stories like this are still buried, waiting to be discovered. And ask yourself, what else is official history hiding from us? What other inconvenient truths are stored in dusty boxes, waiting for someone brave enough to find them? If this story impacted you, imagine how many others exist that haven't been told yet. The past is full of silenced voices waiting to be heard again. And it's up to us to ensure that never again is a brilliant mind erased simply for not fitting the mold that society decided genius should have.